Welcome to the Wayne Bennett podcast, celebrating West Virginia's people, places, and the culture of Southern Appalachia. Now here's your host, Wayne Bennett.
Welcome to the Easy Come, Easy Go broadcast. My name is Wayne Bennett. I'm your host today, and this is our first show, and we're here to talk about Appalachian culture and music and sports and a little bit of everything. And we're not going to talk about negatives, not going to argue religion, not going to argue politics. We're not going to argue. Today, our guest, if you've been to a music festival or you've been to a nightclub or a bar or a church in the past 70 years, chances are you've heard this guy play. And we welcome today Mr. Sonny Pack. Welcome.
Well, glad to be here, Wayne.
We're going to get to the chase right off the bat. How'd you get started in music?
Ricky Nelson used to be on the Ozzie and Harriet show, and I watched him play guitar. And of course, I had two brothers back in the 30s and the 40s while they played music, but I was in New York and didn't pick anything up off of them, but I did Ricky Nelson off the show, and he inspired me to buy a guitar. So that's what I did. I was in Niagara Falls, New York at the time, and had two babies. This was in October 1957. And there was a guitar hanging in the window down there at the Melody Mart on Main Street. Had $17.50 marked on it, and I went in and bought it. Came home with it. My wife asked me what was in that case, and I said, "What do you think?" And she said, "Well, it looks like it might be a guitar." I said, "Well, I'm going to learn to play it and wind up on a Grand Ole Opry." I never did make it.
Well, how did you get started playing professionally? I mean, when was your first band, or who was you?
The first band I really played with was Billy Pack and the bluegrass band. They claimed we were second cousins, and I became friends with them through one of my brothers when I came back here from New York in 61. Well, we played around here together, and then he wound up getting a TV show in Oak Hill, so he included me in it on that show. So I played 59 weekly Friday night barn dance shows with him, and that's really how I got into. People started recognizing me and through the TV. And
did you play bass then?
No, I played straight guitar, but he needed a bass player, so he told me that he'd show me a few notes and got me started on bass.
Now, is that the show Shirley Love? Was he?
Shirley Love and Elmer Hickman, they were the MC people, and there was a furniture store over there was our sponsor. So that put me out in the public quite a bit, playing with Billy.
Well, I've heard of that. There was a lot of, I know right there that in the late 50s and early 60s, there was also a guy named by the name of Eddie Seacrest. He played what they call rockabilly or something, and I think he was from Oak Hill, wasn't he?
He was in the Fayetteville area, but I was in New York when Eddie Seacrest, of course, time I got back here, I heard about him quite a bit.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I think he actually made a couple records, but he was kind of a takeoff from Elvis Presley, that kind of stuff. But what were some of the groups around at that time when you were playing with it?
Well, actually, I do have a list. Of course, I played in a lot of living rooms. After Billy left here, he took up hootenanny on the banjo, and we left the TV station, and I started playing in people's living rooms. And I met Russ Hicks. That's where I met him, was in a living room up on Mapscott Hill at Dennis Meadows' house. And musicians were getting together up there on Sundays and playing. And of course, Dennis Meadows, he found out where I lived by me being on TV. Well, he come over and introduced himself, and he wanted me to start coming over playing with him. So I met a lot of musicians right there on Mapscott Hill, and of course that's where I met Russ Hicks.
Okay.
And he's well known in the area. He's one of the fabulous guitar players I ever heard. And he's always been a kind of a mentor too, but nobody could play like Russ Hicks.
Well, Russ, he kind of, I think he started young played with the Teen Tones, and there was
Right.
a bunch of them, and he, of course, his brother, he had two brothers, Roger and David, I think, and
Yeah, David.
and they both did quite well down in Nashville.
Yeah, they all, Russ, I remember when Russ went to Nashville, he was teaching my son, Danny, steel guitar, and of course, that's when he went to Nashville, and Danny came off that steel guitar because he lost Russ, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if people knew that or not, but Danny started out on a steel guitar, and then, of course, he, like his daddy, he took up bass.
And what were some of the other groups?
Okay, I formed a group after Billy left, played at Hootenanny in colleges. I was married and had a regular job, so I didn't go with them. But some of the groups, I formed a group called the Cool Breeze. And then no, I'm getting ahead of myself. I formed a group called the Swinging Orbits.
I remember them.
But then after that, I formed another group. The lead guitar player got drafted. Then I started another group called the Cool Breeze, and that lasted about 2 years. And then I got one started called Jade East. That lasted about 3 years. Then I got with a group called Bill Morrison Starlighters. I played with them for 12 years.
Well, let's go back to the Swinging Orbits just a minute. Who's
Okay.
in that band? Do you remember?
Well, there was a band up on Mapscott Hill. A lot happened on Mapscott Hill back in the early 60s. They were called the Stingrays. And Billy had just done away with the TV show, and I didn't have nobody to play with. So I saw where they was advertising the Stingrays, and I thought, well, I'll go over and listen to them. So I went over, and there was no music. I couldn't hear nothing. I thought, well, maybe for some reason they're going to play. I'll just walk inside and see what's going on. Well, as I stepped up on the porch, this boy said, "Hey, you're Dennis Pack." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Man, we're needing a bass player." I said, "Well, what kind of music you playing?" He said, "Oh, we're playing rock and roll and stuff." I said, "Do you do any bluegrass or country?" And he said, "Oh, no, we ain't going to play that stuff." I said, "Well, that's what I know." And he said, "Oh, no." He said, "You can play our stuff." So anyway, I said, "Well, I'll give it a shot." And they wanted me to start managing the Stingrays. I said, "Well, I don't like the name. If I'm going to take it over, well, I've got to have another name." So all this stuff going in the area, you know, the Sputniks, and I said, "How about the Swinging Orbits?" And they said, "That sounds good." So we had that group together for 5 years, and that's when Doyle, the lead guitar player, got drafted. So that broke that group up.
Now, what were some of the places you played at that time? What were some of the clubs around?
There was all kinds of clubs around. Bands didn't have any trouble getting bookings because out here on the bypass you had the Green Room. Over in Oak Hill you had Billows, you had Big Ed's Al's Club, you had Russ's Inn, you had the Roaring Twenties. Just all kinds of clubs around.
Well, that's back when the mines was working pretty good, and there was a lot of clubs around. And I remember when you guys played out the Green Room, I'd be coming back from the Babe Ruth ball field, and there would be cars on both sides of the road all the way out the bypass there. And now, did they charge to get in when y'all played at the Green Room? Or
Yeah, they didn't have bands in there, but I went in there. Herschel Goddard owned it at the time, and I asked him if he wanted to try putting a band in it. He said, "I don't need a band. I've already got a clientele." And I said, "You may have a bigger clientele if you have a band." And he said, "Well, bands kind of bring on some riffraff, troublemakers. But he said, if you're willing to come in and play for the door," he said, I'll give it a shot. Well, he was charging $1 a head, and we was wanting to make $10 or $15 a piece. We wound up that first night making $25 a piece. And he said, man, this is going to go good. So Herschel made us into a house band.
Now, is that how you got most of the jobs? You just approached the manager or owner of the place and give them a price? Or
Yeah.
did they work a commission or anything like that? Or did you get any tips?
Very seldom we'd get a tip. Once in a while somebody would come up and ask us if we'd play a song, and if we knew it, we'd play it. They may drop $1 there on the stage, you know. But there wasn't a lot of tipping going on.
So now you played a little bit of rock and roll and country and bluegrass or just whatever.
Right at that time, we were doing Beatle music and rock and roll, Jerry Lee Lewis, Elvis, and all that stuff.
Uh-huh.
But I worked out real good on that bass guitar, coming from bluegrass to that type of music, you know.
So y'all mainly played on Fridays and Saturday nights.
Oh, yeah.
And that was
It was during that
kind of
time.
weekend warrior type thing.
It was during that time we played all over, and Butch Michael had the Beckler Supper Club underneath WGLS, and I went in there and talked to her one time. They had a band in there at the time, and she said she was satisfied with them, but she took my phone number and she said if they would happen to leave, I'll give you a call. Well, the phone rang one day. It was Butch, and she said she needed a band for the weekend. Once we went there and played, she said it's time for a change. I'd like to have y'all. So she gave us a house job playing on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday and Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And that was started out 15 cents a head. And we'd walk out there every night with $15 a piece as a rule. And we talked her in after we'd been in there about a year, I talked her into raising the fee to 25 cents. She said, now, these college kids ain't got that kind of money. She said, they're not going to pay it, but we'll give it a shot. Well, they showed a quarter out, and no problem. So we got a little raise right there.
Well, they called it the Supper Club, but you really didn't have to be a member to go in there. And I remember a lot of the Beckley College students, that was the place to go. Of course, later on, I think they opened the Rathskeller and the Oxford Inn and a couple other places in town. But I know the Supper Club was such a small area, and they would pack people in there. I mean, you couldn't even walk through there. And I don't know, I may be wrong, but I think Butch, she opened up the Arabian Hut down there, but I think the Supper Club had to close because of fire marshal.
Yeah, they only had one way in and one way out.
Yeah, which was, I'm surprised it was open as long as it was.
It was after that I really started booking other clubs, you know.
Uh-huh.
But Bill was sometime, Russ Hicks was a house band over at, they were called the Versatones. Don Hunter played bass, and Pete Hammond was their drummer, just a three-piece, but they sounded like a 6 or 7 orchestra.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they really had their music together, and she'd call me once in a while. Russ would book out Black Knight Country Club or Glade Springs, and she called me one night and asked me if, after we got through to the Beckley Supper Club, would I come over and play, and I said, yeah. So we got to play something over there, even though Russ was the house band.
I know there was one group, when I used to go to Supper Club, that they played 2 or 3 nights a week, and it was just actually 2 musicians and 1 singer, David Lyons and George Campbell and Paul Raglan. Paul Raglan played the keyboard, and he was really good, and they just a 3-man set there, and one of them was just a singer, David Lyons, and they were pretty daggone good though. But there was a guy around. Remember Jerry Gunther?
Oh yeah.
Who did he sing with? Who was he?
Well, he had a group called Sounds of the Century.
Okay.
And all he done was sung. And I was playing over at the green room one night, and he kind of took up for a lady at the bar, and he got shot in the head, and it caused him kind of be a cripple, but he lived through it.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, the Peanut Holly, you know, they had a band during that time, and of course they was competition.
Yeah, the Peanut. Now Billo ended up owning the Raleigh too.
Yeah, he played up there too.
And Peanut was him and his dad and brother were
Bobby.
in a house band. I guess they played quite often there. And Peanut went to the same school I did in grade school, and anytime he had a talent show or whatever, he was one of the best ones in there. And then when he was about 16 years old, he signed a record deal, and he made a record. I had a copy of it. It's called, one side of it was "We Must Part," and I can't remember the other side, but I don't think it made the chart or anything. But he was very talented, and he's down south of Myrtle Beach now.
Yeah.
Still does a little bit of entertaining here and every once in a while, but retired there. But what about the Cool Breeze now? This was after the Swinging Orbits.
It was after the Swinging Orbits. Like I said, the lead guitar player got drafted, and we kind of disbanded, and then I started up the Cool Breeze band. And the way I got the name, I was looking for some aftershave lotion up at a drugstore, and there was a bottle in there called the Cool Breeze. And I said, that'd be a good name. So anyway, I twisted the top off. It smelled pretty good, so I went ahead and bought it. And that's how I come up with the band Cool Breeze.
That's interesting. Now, what's one of the bigger places you played at? They had Kim's Palace opened up.
Oh, yeah.
Somewhere along the line there.
Yeah, I was with the Starlighters at that time. Like I said, we played together about 12 years. And we played Kim's Palace, and our drummer built a Rusty Ken down there at Glen Jean.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, he had to kind of get out of playing drums because he had to look after his club, but Kim O'Neill bought it, and he called it Kim's Corral. And so that was the two big clubs in the beginning that I ever played in around here.
Well, he used to have some big names come in there, didn't he?
Yeah. Now, Bobby, that was the drummer that had it built. He had them big names come in there. And Kim, he leaned towards country music, so that's why I met Porter and a lot of the country stars out of Nashville, Got to back them up and be their opening acts and stuff.
Didn't you guys open up for Porter Wagner one time?
Oh, yeah.
Was Dolly with him then, or?
I asked him about Dolly one day, and then you know what he told me? He said, we won't discuss her. I said, okay.
I think it might have been, it's proven that the best thing that ever happened to her was when they split up. But it was kind of a cordial thing. It was just professional, I think.
Well, he sued her, and got quite a bit of money at one time.
Uh-huh.
I think it was
Now
maybe a couple million.
Yeah. They...
but they remained friends. And she wrote that song for him, but they say that...
Yeah, I Always Love You or something like that. That's what I've heard. Now, what about over toward now, you talked about Oak Hill. What about over toward Bluefield? I know when I was a kid, we only got 3 channels on television, and it was black and white. And we got Channel 3, and we got Channel 4, WAY, and then we get Channel 6, which was WHIS. Every once in a while, we would get Channel 8, but it would be fuzzy. And I kind of liked all kinds of music when I was a kid, but we'd get Buddy Starcher every once in a while on Channel 8. But
they were on in the mornings.
Yeah, and then, but on Channel 6, WHIS, they had a barn dance too, didn't they?
They had, forget just what they called it. They were on Saturday, and we were playing on Friday at WAY, where Darnell Miller was on that band over there on Saturday. And my dad had told me said, you need to go over and get with those guys, because they was playing his kind of music, swinging, the country stuff, where we were playing bluegrass, banjo stuff,
Mm-hmm.
So he told me, he said, you ought to go over and get on with them. I called him Pop. I said, Pop, I'm not good enough to play with them guys, but down through the years, they had a singer over there was Darnell Miller. And I did wind up playing 3 years with Darnell. He's kind of retired right now, but if he'd call me tomorrow, I'd go play with him in a heartbeat.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Darnell just a little later.
Okay.
Let's get to
what's
some other groups that you know of or named earlier in the
You're talking about bands that was in that?
bands or individuals, either one.
Okay. Of course, we mentioned Peanut Hall in the Hallmarks. There was a group out of Oak Hill, Evil Ways or something like that. Do you remember them?
I remember Evil Incorporated.
Evil Incorporated, that was it.
Yeah.
And then Danny, my son, played with a group called the Midnight Beats. And then, of course, you had Russ Hicks and the Versatones. And the Esquires, they were around here at the time. Then there was a boy over in Oak Hill, his name was Dennis Spangler. He had a group called Dennis and the Times.
Oh.
And then, of course, later on, they got me in that band too, so there was two Dennises. And I said, y'all can just call me Sonny. They said, no, we're going to have two Dennises in here. So then you had the Knights of Rhythm out of Oceana, and you had the Redcoats, I think they were out of Princeton.
I remember that.
Those were the popular groups. That was all a competition for each other.
Uh-huh.
But we were all friends, but still we had to bid against them on prices and stuff.
Now, there was a high school group, mainly high school, when I was a senior and a little later, they called the Red Barons, and it was a big, they had trumpets and saxes and everything, and I think used to be Mayor Pugh, he played in that. There was Roger Hicks played a little while with them, and then there was a group called the Soul Set. Danny Bailey played lead guitar with them for a while, but then they kind of combined and made the Imperials. It was several black members in that group, and they played mainly soul music and Motown sounds, and I think they traveled quite regionally, different place. But no, it used to be a place in White Sulphur Springs you guys played at too, wasn't it?
That was called the Pit Barbecue.
Okay.
They just sold beer at the time. They didn't have liquor, but we'd go up there and play.
Yeah,
of course, we played there was a country club up there, and they'd get us once in a while, but basically, most of my playing in White Sulphur at that time was the Pit Barbecue.
Now, you were playing other people's songs most of the time. Did you ever write any music yourself?
Oh, yeah, I've wrote several songs, and one of them was called Second Choice. And the other one was Why Did I Lose Your Love? And another one was called Pretty Judy Ann. I can write songs, but Russ Hicks told me if I ever wrote one, if I didn't want to record it, put it in an envelope and send it to myself. That way the government had handled it. But he said, don't open it up. And if somebody ever stole it off of me, well, I'd have it dated on that envelope.
Like a copyright type thing. Yeah,
he gave me a few pointers.
Yeah. Over on WHIS too, there was Cecil Surratt.
Well, that's
remember him, and now Snoop and Scoop. They had a show there. I don't know. I don't know what group, what band that was, or what somebody played.
I think that was just two guys, maybe.
But it was quite a bit of stuff going on at that time. Who's your favorite artist as far as playing? If you had to pick one, you said Russ Hicks, and then you said Ricky Nelson. Of course,
well,
it'd
have to be Darnell. Well, Porter, I loved him to death too, but I got to know Darnell real good playing with him for 3 years, and I really think the world of him.
Well, he has done some. I mean, he was huge on Wheeling Jamboree, and he's had several records like Hinges on the Door and things like that. And even now, I guess he's kind of semi-retired, but he's kind of hit it big over in Europe. They're playing a lot of his songs.
We used to talk about that, and he said, "Boys, one of these days I'm going to take y'all overseas," but that never did happen, you know. But he's real big. I guess probably that's where he's getting all of his royalties now, is from over there.
Did you ever go to Nashville to just look around, or go down there and try to get any kind of jobs? Or
well, I had a job. Billy wound up down there after hooting anyway. He wound up playing with Wilma Lee on the opera down there. And he came back up here one day and he said they were needing a bass player and asked me if I'd be interested in it. Well, I done started my own laundry route, but then I had my truck and doing pretty good. And I told him, I said, "Billy, I can't do it because I was already got obligated to customers and making payments on a truck, and so I missed out. I should have just parked that truck and went on down. And of course, Wilma Lee was a regular on the Grand Ole Opry. I did go to Nashville several times. I always visited Russ down there, and I've been on the stage, but there was no music here. I just climbed up there and had somebody take my picture. I can say I've been on the Grand Ole Opry, but it's kind of leading false because I didn't get to do nothing.
I see. Well, this is only a 30-minute show, and we're kind of running into the limit. I got to ask you one real important question. Can we get you back for another show?
Absolutely, love it.
I've enjoyed talking to you and learned quite a bit myself, and I've got a lot more questions. So we're gonna do that. And for the people out there, if you got any suggestions for a show, you can email me at awbennett50, that's 50 at gmail.com. awbennett, small letters, 50 at gmail.com. And maybe you might want to be on the show. You got something to offer, we'll get you on here. But that's how to get a hold of us. And want to thank Sonny Pack for being here. And we're definitely got him coming back, and he's already committed. You heard it here. So until then, just remember, if you ain't dead yet, you ain't done yet, and God bless you.